Rand's on the phone with me, just listening. So she'll yell at me if all of a sudden I go blank or it's not working. So tonight I'm just going to talk a little bit about what we do in the province with wildlife rescue, and I also work with wildlife rehabilitation. So I will touch a bit on that as well. The reason that I am doing this presentation today is that I ran into a couple members, yourself included, out looking for, I think it was a duck one day. Yeah. And you're interested in what we do, and I gave you my card, and you sent an email, and the rest is history, so to say. So I will just I will start my screen share, and I'm going to hope that this is going to work. And if it doesn't, Ryan will tell me. And feel free to ask any questions at the end, or in the middle if it works. And yeah, I hope you enjoy it. So normally this is a presentation that we give to our new volunteers, and we teach them everything that they need to know to become volunteers. And even after this, you know, maybe some of you will be interested in becoming volunteers of the future. All right, here we go. Okay, can you see my presentation, Elaine? Yeah, all right. And you can hear me? This is just awesome. Okay, so Wildlife Rescue Society of Saskatchewan. We used to be called Wildlife Rehabilitation Society of Saskatchewan, but that didn't really reflect what we do. We are the volunteers that do the actual rescuing and transportation of injured and orphaned wildlife. And the rehabilitators are the ones that we take these wildlife to for rehabilitation. So the way that I got involved, hold on, I'm trying to oh, yay, okay. Yay. The reason I got involved was, so this is me with a little raccoon. That's me with a deer. And this is Scott, who's the other host usually. He's not available tonight. He's a vet tech at the Animal Clinic of Regina. So the way I got involved was about 6 years ago. Hey, Rianne, I'm going to hang up on you, and you're on this. So call me if anything goes sideways, okay? I don't think she was listening to me anyway. Okay, so I got involved about 6 years ago when I found a bunny coming across my lawn, a little wee bunny, and I'm like, well, that is so little. What is it doing? And next thing I knew, there was a cat coming through the bushes after it. And I'm looking out the window in my house coat. It was a Saturday, and next thing I know, I see this cat running down the street with this bunny, and it's screaming. So I'm chasing the cat and the bunny down Regina Avenue in my house coat in the rain, yelling, "Drop it." So when I got back to my house with the bunny, there was birds, crows, going after two other little bunnies that had been living in my bush unbeknownst to me. So I gathered up these bunnies, and I'm like, well, what do I do with them, right? And so I phoned the Humane Society, and they gave me the number for Salthaven. I called Salthaven, and I talked to Megan Lawrence at Salthaven, and she said, well, normally you would put them back, but because the cat knows, because the birds know, they're at risk, and the mother isn't around. She only comes back once or twice a day at dusk or dawn to feed them, and so they are at risk. So you can bring them to me. So then I just started asking questions, you know, how do I get involved? She told me about the wildlife rescue. So I signed up for the next volunteer orientation session. So fast forward 6 years, 7 years, I guess, I'm now on the board of Wildlife Rescue Society of Saskatchewan, and I work at Salthaven Rehabilitation Center. So from that little experience, I went all the way from just wondering what I would do to becoming someone that's now presenting this information to people like you and to new volunteers. So it's really awesome, because what I get to do now is I get to take an animal from rescue to Salthaven, where I also work. I volunteer, and to release. So I get full circle. I get full circle with some of these animals. So what you see here is me with a little raccoon. And I have become the raccoon person for Regina. So I am the interim with the raccoons, which that season is going to be starting pretty soon here, because I took one once. So it was like, oh, you took a raccoon once. Here, take another one, take another one. And so what I do is I keep them for a week or two until they can get to a rehabilitator. And I feed them and I take care of them. And, we've had, brand newborn raccoons up into adolescence that were very aggressive, but it's a very rewarding thing to do. Okay, so what is the Wildlife Rescue Society of Saskatchewan? We are an essential service that services Saskatchewan. We run a provincial hotline. We call it our 911 provincial hotline, and that's where folks can call in and say, hey, I found, well, last night I was working at Salthaven. Somebody said, I found a bird with its eyeball hanging out. And yeah, so what do I do with it? So, we have volunteers all over the province. We have volunteers from Prince Albert, Saskatoon, Regina, Moose Jaw that are on the hotline, and they take these calls and they tell the people what to do with these animals and where to take them. Okay. We facilitate rescues by sending out volunteers to do the rescue, trained volunteers. And we are governed by the Ministry of Environment. So we have permits for transporting permittable wildlife, so things like raptors, any animal that requires a permit, we have a permit once you're a volunteer. So the goal of us is, there's a few things. We want to prevent the unnecessary removal of wildlife whenever we can. If I would have called into Megan and said, I found these bunnies in my bush in front of my house, can I bring them to you? She would have said, no, 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 you put them back. They have no scent. That's what they do. They lay there until their mother comes back at dusk or dawn to feed them. It's okay. They're okay. They're not abandoned. They're not orphaned. Okay. I didn't know that until I started doing this. Prevent accidental injury or illness to wildlife by having trained rescuers and rehabilitators. We inform and educate the public, which is what we're doing now, and through phone calls. We rescue and we transport the wildlife. And so sometimes, so for my work life, I work for occupational health and safety with the provincial government. And sometimes I'll say, so we travel all over the province. So sometimes it'll be, I'm driving to Saskatoon today, if anything needs transport. Sometimes I'll take up something that needs to get to Living Sky to just facilitate a rehabilitation there. And we ensure, whenever possible, that what is rescued and rehabilitated is returned to their natural habitats. And whenever possible, to where they came from. There's a lot of wildlife that, mate for life. There's geese that mate for life, and their spouse still is sometimes sitting out there waiting, wondering, where did my mate go? I remember facilitating a release. We had a goose for a couple months that had a angel wing, and I got to do that rescue at the golf course and the rehabilitation part a little bit at Salthaven, and then I got to release it, and there was the mate waiting, and it was actually brought tears to my eyes, because I I hate doing goose rescues the most, because the mate runs with them. They don't fly away. They stay by their mate. They run with them. They're panicked. They are so distraught when we take their mate away. But unfortunately, we have to. They're injured. And whenever possible, we bring it right back there. So I love that part. I love the release, and I love seeing them reconnect. So who are we? We are a board of directors. There's 7 of us on the board. Myself, Rayanne, that was helping us with the technology. Thank you, Rayanne, if you're still on this. There's myself as a secretary. We have a treasurer. We have a past president, a vice president, a president, and 2 directors. We also have a management team that does things like, so I'm the director of training now, and we have Rianne who's in charge of the hotline. So we have a management team for a variety of things. We have target veterinarians throughout the province. There are 20 so far target veterinarians, and we're hoping for more throughout the province that will do whatever needs to be done to facilitate the rehabilitation of these wildlife. So ACOR is our our vet of that we use here, and it's a free service, and we appreciate them so much that, you know, we get in a hawk or an owl or something and they have a broken wing, and they'll put a pin in the wing, you know, they'll do stitches, they'll they'll do euthanizations if necessary, and whenever possible they will do everything they can to save a life at no cost to us, except for maybe the cost of the pin that goes in the arm. So yeah, we really appreciate it. We have provincial rehabilitators, and we have 10 of those across the province. The main ones we have are Living Sky in Saskatoon and Salthaven Wildlife here in Regina. And then there's others that aren't as large, but those are the two main large ones in the province. We have volunteers, about 150 volunteers. And unfortunately, despite how many volunteers we have, actually we have more than that now. We had quite a few groups go through. Very few follow through and actually do anything. So we have a lot of people that sign up and go through the orientation, but there aren't a whole lot that stick with it and actually become active volunteers. I don't know why, if it's kind of a fear thing or intimidation thing, they don't know what to do. The thing is, none of us knew what to do, and we all make mistakes, and we are a really forgiving group of people because we all remember what it was like to go on your first rescue. We also have summer students, and every year we have students that take over the hotline for most of the summer, and we need them. We have 2 or 3. Last year we had 4. We were lucky enough to have 4 students, and the hotline in the summer is insane. Sometimes I don't know what our highest number was. If Rianne's on here, she can unmute and let us know. But sometimes we have I think it was like 100 calls in a day. So in the middle of summer, when you have baby season, the amount of calls we get is unbelievable. Fledglings, people think it's an injured bird, such as a crow. You know, a crow in a month is the same size as its parents. The only way you know that it's not a baby, and you folks might know this also, is by the look of their beak, and they have blue eyes. Otherwise, they think it's an injured adult crow. So we also have summer students that work at some of the rehabilitators. And in the summer, it's so busy with orphaned wildlife. You know, you got a mother rabbit that gets run over. You've got little owlets that, you know, the parent get hit by a truck or whatever it is. It's just crazy busy in the summer. So what do we do? How do we help? We facilitate rescues and transports province-wide. So we have a really good core group of volunteers that communicate. We have online systems that we communicate through, and we're like, hey, I need to get this animal to this rehabilitator, who's going that way? And it almost always works out within a couple of days. We have the hotline, which is 365 days a year, 12 hours a day. Every day, Christmas Day, New Year's Day, doesn't matter. We have somebody on there from 9 to 9 every day. And it's all, you know, it's a labor of love. Nobody gets paid for this. We just do it because we care. We educate public and raise awareness. We connect organizations throughout the province. And wow, I can't see. Hold on, I got to get rid of that. And we have educational events and fundraising. And I'll get into a little bit more about what that means. So how can you help if you ever want to volunteer? These are some of the things that we do. Not everyone is cut out for every job. So some people would rather talk on the phone than be out doing what I did last weekend, and that was capturing a coyote who had been trapped in a trap and chewed his leg off. And he was a big guy. And there's a lot of people that are, they don't want to do that. They'd rather give information and send somebody to get that coyote than to actually go get that coyote. And that's awesome, because we need those people as much as we need the person to go do the rescue. And events. So some of our fundraising, education, we need people for social media. We have a social media campaign right now about the pigeon. And I am a lover of pigeons. And I became a lover of pigeons when I met my first baby pigeon, and I was like, what is that? It's the most misidentified bird there is. And it's this little pterodactyl looking thing. And I'm like, what could that possibly be? And it's like, oh, it's a pigeon. I had no idea this little yellow fuzzy pterodactyl thing was a pigeon. And as I got to, rehab and raise a few, I realized just what loving, sweet, caring birds they are, that society hates because they poop on things, because they live amongst us. And so right now we're doing a campaign to raise awareness for pigeons and what pigeons are actually all about. Some perks for us in doing this job is to meet other people that are like us. Just like for you guys, this is Nature Regina. You love nature. So being that you love nature, I'm sure you also love wildlife. So you meet people just like you. And I've made friends doing this that will be friends for the rest of my life. Some amazing people that actually get what I love. My family thinks I'm crazy. They just, what I do and how I run myself ragged sometimes doing the rescues, doing the rehabilitation, but I love it. And unless you get it, you don't get it. You help to contribute to the conservation of the wildlife. It looks good on your resume. We also get tax mileage. So if you keep track of your mileage, it's a good tax benefit. And I drive thousands of miles every year. And so this year I finally bought a book, and I'm like, why don't I log that? So I'm going to finally do it and get the tax benefit for it. You gain knowledge. Like, look at how far I've come from that day I found that bunny coming out of my bushes to where I am today. I can't believe the knowledge that I've gained in these 6 years. You can become a rehabber of the future, which is what I'm doing now. I'm the raccoon lady here in Regina, and upstairs I have squirrels. We had so many orphan squirrels this year that some of the volunteers had to take some because they can't be released in the fall. So come spring, these guys will be free to go, and it's a lot of fun. So you can get involved at many levels with us. We have people that do social media, educational presentations, which is what I'm doing now. Some people love public speaking. Some people, like Rayanne, says she would rather die. And I get it. When I first started public speaking in my job, I thought I was going to die. I was just like, I could just hear the screaming in my brain. But now I do it so much that it's easy. But I would much rather, sorry, my cat's trying to jump up on my screen. I would much rather stand in front of people than do it this way, because I am not a techie person, and when things go sideways, I really don't know what to do. So we need people for administration, we need graphic designers and artists and people that are really good at photography. Some of the events and fundraising that we do are mostly in Saskatoon, but we're trying to get more going here in Regina. And so I hope if some of you belong to our pages, our Facebook pages, and you see some of the events and fundraising that you'd love to come out. So these are just some of the events that we do. The biggest one we do is Gone Wild for Wildlife, and that's in Saskatoon, and that's a really large one, and it's sponsored by Sask Power. Right now we're doing raffles, 50-50 raffles, because there's a lot that we couldn't do this last year with COVID. It's been a strange year. It's been a strange year for all of us, and fundraising has kind of gone by the wayside for this year. Even Gone Wild for the Wildlife was canceled this year, unfortunately. So we do a lot of rescues, as I was saying. Um, and so we always make sure that our volunteers are prepared. So we have volunteers when they do their orientation. They're also trained in techniques of capture. So you can see some of the items that we use there. We have nets, we have crates, we have catch poles, we wear vests. We always have a vest on. Every volunteer gets a vest with wildlife rescue on the back, especially if you're on the side of a highway or something. There's some dangerous situations. You're chasing an injured goose down the side of a road. People need to be able to see you. So we always tell them to make a plan, take whatever personal protective equipment they think they might need along with them. And that could be just about anything. And like I said, I did this coyote rescue the other weekend, and it was tough. I used almost every piece of equipment I had to try to catch this poor guy. He was trapped in a corner in a shed, a wood shed, and the wood shed was completely full of materials and a tractor, and trying to get into where he was. He was in this small corner. So I used the catch pole, I used the net, and ultimately at the end of the day, I used a blanket. And one of the most important things I can say is gloves. You need good gloves. You need good leather gloves, good welding gloves to protect your hands, because you can lose a finger. We've had, even our president was injured. It's a good idea to always wear protective eyewear. She got hit in the eye by a goose during a rescue. She lost her vision in that eye for a number of months. She wasn't sure if it was ever going to come back. So these are things to think about when you're going on a rescue. We tell them to always approach animals with caution, because they might be, in fight, flight, or freeze. So you don't know really if they're just sitting there waiting to fight you, or they're sitting waiting to flee, or if they're actually frozen. So you have to realize that it could be any of these three, and it could change at any moment. And we always tell them to make sure they take it to the appropriate clinic. If you drop off something at, the 24-hour clinic, well, they're not going to do anything for it. And we don't have funds to pay for animals at any clinic, right? It has to go to the proper clinic and to the proper rehabilitation center. We always ask them to keep the public away whenever possible. We had a member of the public that was bitten by a raccoon last fall. Luckily, the raccoon did die, but he was tested and he didn't have rabies. But that individual did have to go for rabies shots, just as a precaution. So, they don't have the equipment to do it, and we do. So we do our best to keep them away. When we always tell them to avoid eye contact, because a lot of animals find that intimidating. Some not so much, but a lot of them, more so than not, find it very intimidating. And we always say it: move slowly, gently, and quietly. If you go running at something, it's gonna run away. Anything you chase runs away. And I always say that goes for dating and wildlife. Okay, so some of the questions that we ask when someone calls us about an animal in distress, we'll say, is that animal still mobile? Or has it been sitting in one area for a really long time? Have you walked up to it? And if you have, did it move? If you walk up to an animal and it doesn't fly away or run away, usually something's wrong. What's the area like? Is there water nearby? Is it a goose and it's just going to go into the water and we're never going to catch it anyway? Okay. Do they know what it is, what the species is? How big is it? I had a caller last summer call and say she's found this strange bird on Dudney Avenue, and she doesn't know what it is, but it's blue and it's huge. And I was like, what could that be? It's huge and blue. And I said, is it a goose? And she said, yeah, it's like a blue goose. So I go to this rescue on Dudney Avenue, and I'm like, I can't imagine what this is going to be, a huge blue goose. And so I got there and I said to the lady, where is it? She said, it's under this vehicle. And I go, what does it look like? And she goes, just like that. And she pointed to a pigeon. So it wasn't a blue goose at all. It was a pigeon, with, I guess, with a little bit of blue in it. But I think she had no idea what a pigeon was. So yeah. So, sometimes you're not always going to get accurate information when you're asking what species it is. So like I said, how close can you get to it? Does it run away? And how long has it been there? Always make a plan when you are going out into a rescue. We always say, have these things in your vehicle. We have our volunteers sign up for rescues. So I'm signed up tomorrow during the day, I think. And so our hotline volunteer will look and say, okay, Susan's ready. But if I'm out doing something else, I got to make sure I've got a net, a crate, or a tote in my vehicle, and my personal protective equipment that I could possibly need at a moment's notice. We always ask the caller, if they can, to remain at the location. And that's really helpful because, you're talking to them on the phone. They'll say, yeah, I'm out here. Call me when you get here and I'll show you where it is. It's really helpful to have somebody take you and show you exactly, what they're looking at and what they see. So if the animal is mobile, it is going to try to get away. One of our biggest problems, like I said, is geese. We chased a goose last year that had a fish hook stuck in its leg for months. We not chased, but we tried to capture this goose. We never got it. She had 30 babies. A lot of them she had adopted. Geese will adopt other babies from other geese for whatever reason. And she had the longest line of babies behind her that I've ever seen. She had her mate with her, but she had this terrible hobble and she was in so much pain. And all we really wanted to do was get her, not take her in, just get that fishing hook out of her leg and clean it up and let her go. We couldn't get her. We never got her. And that was because of the escape routes. She was so close to water and she was on to us. She was smart. And so she would see us and she was like, she could read our minds. She knew exactly what we were doing. And she was never far from the water. And when we get within 5-10 feet of her, in the water she went. So move slowly and deliberately, but never chase it. And where it says get in between it and a danger area, that could mean like a road. We had a lot of duckling rescues last year. They are the worst to try to do. You have 10 ducklings scattered going in different directions on Albert Street. If you can have, it's really good to have something like a snow fence that you can unroll and have in front of the ducklings so they can't run through it, and try to have a few volunteers. And we had a duckling rescue group that would show up, 4 or 5 of us, and it was always just chaos, and we would do everything we could to rein them in and get them to water. And the mother would always be waiting at the nearest water. Really interesting. Learned a lot about ducks last year. So if the animal is not mobile, it will likely put up a fight. And so what could this animal use as a defense? Well, something like an owl. They don't usually bite you, but they got talents that can rip your arm off. And we've had to do eagle rescues. And when you look at the talons on an eagle, they're bigger than your hands. If you look at your hand, that eagle's talons are larger than your fingers. So always, know what the animal is, we say, and what are they going to use as its defense. The coyote, it wanted to bite me. It was trying to bite me. So knowing your animals and what they use as a defense is really good to know. Always use your PPE. And once the animal is netted or covered, and covering it with a blanket is really helpful, it will usually give in. It'll surrender. It's like, okay, I'm caught. And that's what happened with the coyote. When I finally got her, when I finally got to her, when I finally covered her with the blanket, I was able to just scoop her up and pick her up, and she didn't fight me anymore. When we transport an animal, it's important that the container is suitable size for the animal. So if you're going to pick up, let's say, a fawn, we've had a number of fawn rescues. Don't bring a small cat carrier, okay? And don't bring one that is too large because it's just going to slide around in there or bang around if it's got an injury to a wing or something. Make sure it's just the right size that it can move a little bit, but not flail about and re-injure itself. So will the animal be able to escape? A second, I'm just gonna have a drink. Really important here that you have a proper container, and I know this from experience because I went and got a goose at a, no, this has actually happened to me a few times. I went to get a goose at a golf course that had been hit with a golf ball, and I got him into a large tub with a locking. We have these, those big totes, tubs for storage. Well, and then they have holes on it. So I got the goose in there and I had the lid on. I thought tight, driving down the ring road, and there's the goose sitting beside me. And I look at it, and then it just lost it. And the goose was flying around inside of my car. I had another volunteer with me, and yeah, that I learned that day that a toad is probably not always the best thing to contain a large goose. Um, Always have to have something like a blanket or a towel on the bottom so that they don't slide around. If you have them just in like a cardboard box or a crate, it's really slippery, so they can re-injure themselves. And never open a box or crate once they're contained unless you absolutely have to. A lot of people call and say, I really think this animal likes me. They seem really calm around me. Well, they're not, they don't like you, honestly, usually. They're just terrified. So a lot of people will let their guard down, go up to them, oh, they like me. No, they don't. They don't. So don't let the calm exterior fool you into letting your guard down. Every wild animal is afraid. And so if you have it in your vehicle, we always have to say, drive slowly, cautiously, don't yell, don't blare your radio, don't smoke. And even if it's possible, cover it with another sheet or blanket so it doesn't have to see you or look around. They are terrified. Safety first. So we always say to our volunteers, if at any time they're uncomfortable or entering a property on their own, let somebody know. We have some apps now, like Glimpse, where we can track you. Somebody can track where you are. I had my own little experience with an individual that called about a nest of birds on his deck, and he was an apartment building. And our hotline volunteer had said, this guy was really rude, really aggressive. And he said, if somebody doesn't come and get them, I'm killing them. So I went, and my background, my background is law enforcement, and I've learned over the years to really trust my gut. And I got there and I saw the guy. He came to the door, and something in me just said, do not go in there by yourself. So I said to the guy, I'll be back. And I called two other volunteers, and the three of us went in. And I don't know what would have happened. He was incredibly rude. He was an angry, not a nice guy. So I don't know what would have happened, but something wasn't right. And so we always say to people, if you're uncomfortable, don't go in. Let somebody know where you are. And especially if you're in a rural location, even our president got caught on a barbed wire fence in a rural location, trying to do a rescue. And she was with some other volunteers, and they left. And as she's hung up on the barbed wire fence, they're beeping and waving goodbye at her. So some hunters came along and helped her get loose, but yeah, she didn't have her phone, she couldn't get help. It's a little bit funny, but it could have been, it could have gone a lot worse. So some of the concerns that we have with animal health concerns are these that you see here. So capture myopathy. This is associated with capturing or handling of any wild species. They can die from just fear. Sorry, I'm going to turn off my phone. They can just die from fear. So you'll have an animal, and rabbits are especially bad for this. They are very skittish, very fearful, and they do not do well in captivity because of capture myopathy. Basically, capture myopathy, they die from fear. Okay, so though all those things that I said before, you know, being as quiet as you can, as calm as you can, walking up as slow as you can, to them all contribute to them not having capture myopathy. We also have a lot of human health concerns that that we tell our volunteers about. Zoonotic diseases, they can be passed between animals and humans. SARS, coronavirus, you know, rabies, pests, you can get fungus, you can inhale bacteria. You know, there's so many things that can be passed on. So it's you need to know what these are. What was that one? Oh, you can just get like cat scratch fever from a number of different animals. There's a type of worm that is passed through a raccoon's feces. You actually have to get the feces in your mouth, but if you do and it's got this worm, it will go after your brain. So you will die from it. So very rare, but there are things that are very dangerous that can be passed on between animals and humans. The individual, like I said, that got bit by the raccoon, the member of the public, he had to go had to go to the doctor and get rabies shots, and I tell you, you get pretty sick from those. So protective equipment, protective clothing, always washing your hands after, really, really important in prevention. We always tell our volunteers that safety of them comes before anything else. The hotline is the most important position that we have. Without the hotline, nobody would be able to tell us what they see, and we rely on the public to call us and say, hey, there's you know, a deer at the side of the road. There's you know, a little raccoon wandering down the street by himself, screaming. You know, we rely on people to say, this is what we see, and we think this animal needs some help. So the purpose of the hotline is to assist and educate the public, to reduce, resolve, and prevent human and wildlife contact whenever possible, protect the health and education of the public, and reduce unnecessary interventions, such as, like I said, with rabbits, right? They're hiding in a bush for weeks. The mother comes back once a day. People call us all the time saying, I've got them in a Tupperware container in my basement. And that's when the hotline, who is educated, knows, no, you don't need to do that. Put them back where you found them. And no, they won't be rejected because they smell like you. That's a myth. Okay. A lot of people think that if a baby bird falls out of the nest and you pick it up, that the mother and father will never want to, you know, feed them again, or will kick them out of the nest. That's a myth. The hotline can ensure the correct rescue and transport, and encourage wildlife in urban settings. So these are some of our stats. So when you look back at 2007, this is the first year of the hotline, 177 calls. 2019, it's 30, what is that, 36, 35, yeah, well over 3,000, almost 4,000 calls. And we're well over that again this year. So every year it's climbing. And as the public knows about the wildlife rescue, we get more and more calls all the time. So even doing education sessions like this, more of you will know what we do, and can facilitate the public contacting us. So these are some of the stats. I'm going to put on my glasses for this. This is how it breaks down. For some reason, more calls in Saskatoon, 52% of the calls are in Saskatoon, generally. Regina comes in second. Then we have places, sorry, my cat, I jumped on the computer. Then we have places like Swift Current, Estevan, Prince Albert. Moose Jaw has quite a few, and then the rest of the province is other. So that's a lot of rural farms. We have a lot of farmers calling us with injured wildlife, and we really appreciate that. But Saskatoon, 52% of the calls. I think maybe people are out and about a little bit more in Saskatoon and they see these things. So when you're working a hotline shift with us, you collect the message, you investigate possible solutions. Sometimes it's a call saying there's a moose laying at the side of the road. Well, obviously I'm not going to go pick that moose up in my little SUV. So that's when we coordinate with the Ministry of Environment, and they go out, and the conservation officers take care of some of those. Sometimes we coordinate with the city. That can be a bunch of ducklings trying to get to water, fell in a drain hole. Okay, so we got to call the city. We need somebody to come in and get that grate off so we can get in there with a net and get those ducklings. Okay, so we return calls and we log information on our portal. So we have a portal. So when you call us, there's a phone number that you call, and these are some examples of some calls that we get. It's the number, if anybody wants to write it down, it's 306-242-7177, and I think that comes up here in a little bit as well. And then we will coordinate and make sure that whatever that animal needs to get, it gets. So these are some calls. Can I raise this baby by myself? Well, no. This is a problem we have. People are raising animals. We have a non-releasable vulture at Salthaven Wildlife because somebody raised him, and one day he got out, or they released him, and he didn't know how to be a vulture, and he walked into a bar in Cupar. So it sounds like the start of a joke, but this actually happened. This vulture walked into a bar in Cupar and just wanted to hang around the people. So now he lives with the people because he doesn't know how, and he never will be able to be a vulture in the wild. It can be a bird hit my window and it isn't moving. So the hotline person could say, can you put something over it, like a basket or something? Come back in an hour or two. If he flies away, great. Sometimes they're just stunned. Otherwise, if he doesn't, let us know. We'll send a volunteer to collect it. That's the thing about window strikes. I'd say half of them kind of come to and fly away on their own in a couple hours, and then the other half have a head injury and have to come to us for a while, and some have to be put down. Wildlife rescue is not for everyone, and so I can't stress enough how difficult it is sometimes to see what you see. A couple of years ago, there's a couple of things that have haunted me over the years, and one was I got a call for a rabbit, a little bush bunny that was injured, and when I picked him up, he had no face. He was just a skull, and he was alive, and he must have had a sore, and parasites were eating his face. And it was one of the worst things I've ever seen. And I've never been so happy for an animal to be euthanized as I was for that poor little guy. Last night at Salthaven, a little bird came in with its eye, one eye completely gone and one hanging there. So it's not always a good story. You're going to see things that are awful, like this. And this is a flicker that was flying after his dinner, I guess, and hit you can see his wings there. Those were his wings, hit a fence. This guy made it. It looks really bad, but he made it. And this is a success story. You would never think that, but it was. And that's partly the color from him and partly blood. So yeah, you're going to see things when, even going to see this coyote the other day was absolutely horrific. These are some of the resources that we have. We have a manual for our new volunteers. We have hotline and rescue mentors. So I'm going to be mentoring someone tomorrow night on the hotline. It'll be their first time doing it. And you know, it's intimidating for a person for their first time. You have somebody calling in saying, what do I do? They're going, well, I don't know. So it's good to do a few shifts with somebody who is a seasoned, kind of a seasoned veteran, that has done this for a few years, so that they get to know what they need to do. You never want to go on your first rescue by yourself. Always want our volunteers to go with another volunteer that has been doing this for a while, because especially we don't want injuries, and you learn from the others. We have province-wide contacts, like we are with vets, with the Ministry of Environment, with the city, with even pest control companies that work with us. You know, that's how we get most of our raccoons. A farmer will shoot a mother and then realize, uh-oh, I have babies in my attic. And so the pest control company sets up live traps and then calls us and says, I got some babies for you. So a lot of really good contacts that we have, and we all work together for the best possible solution. And of course, we have meetings and training for our volunteers. We have bi-monthly meetings for our volunteers, just to see, you know, how things are going. We have, you know, just kind of have fun and talk about things and do training. This is just an example of our portal. So this just shows, these are the people that have signed up for the hotline. So you can see here is Sheila Aiken, and she lives in Saskatoon. Okay, here's Sue Bazant. She lives in Prince Albert. Here's Jim Krentz. He's on the hotline. He lives in North Battleford. Okay, so we sign up for 4-hour shifts generally, and then once your shift's over, next person. This is, underneath it is the rescue schedule. So if you're on the hotline, you want to see a large group of people in this rescue schedule, because that's who you call. So in Regina that day, we had Nat Slipback and Brittany Nemi. So you can see here, though, that we only had volunteers from 2 p.m. until 9:30 p.m. So from 9 until 2, we have to put out a post on Facebook, our social page, saying, is anybody available to go? We have this that needs to be picked up. Okay, so that is what we do. That's the end of the presentation, and happy to answer any questions, clarify anything if you have any questions. And I'm so glad this worked, and I hope I don't hear now that my screen froze and nobody could hear me.
Can you hear me, Susan?
I can.
Okay, perfect. So everything went off without a hitch. So yeah, it went great. Great presentation, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
So I guess what might be easiest is if people want to go ahead and ask a question or raise their hand in the chat, or if they'd prefer to put their question in the chat, I can help with that as well. I'll ask the first question.
Okay.
So what is the furthest that you go from your home location? Like, I guess, yeah, was the coyote within close proximity, or do you have to drive quite a few miles? Or
Yeah, it can be quite a ways. The coyote was about a 40-minute drive out past Craven.
okay, cool.
Yeah, and there's, you know, some people, they prefer not to drive outside of town. That's wear and tear on your vehicle, right? And we get it. So so it's nice that one of the perks is that you actually can get a tax credit for your mileage. So it's something you get back. But not everyone can afford the gas either, you know, to drive that many miles. We have volunteers down in, say, Maple Creek area, Swift Current area, that are kind of on their own. and so they keep a lot of animals. They'll keep them something for a week sometimes before it can transport can be arranged to get it to a rehabilitator. And so we appreciate those ones so much, and help them with food and formula for these wildlife whenever we can.
That's super interesting. Thank
Yeah,
you.
you're welcome.
We do have a question in the chat from Jim.
Okay.
And it says, are you thinking eventually that the numbers are going to peak?
The numbers for calls, is that what he means?
I'm not sure. Jim, could you clarify? Numbers for calls, yes.
Oh, I don't know what it would peak at. In the winter, it's fairly quiet. And sometimes, we don't get a call, in that day. But then as spring comes, like now, with the warm weather, animals are getting out and about. And then comes summer, it's just nonstop. When you're on the hotline, you hang up, you got three more waiting. And as far as peaking, I'm not sure. I suppose eventually, but with education and more people, finding out, that there is a resource out there that will come and can coordinate a rescue. It's just growing exponentially every year.
Did we have any other questions for Susan?
If anybody wants to ever volunteer, let me know. This presentation wasn't to try to get you to volunteer. It was just to let you know what we do. But I love that I get to talk to a bunch of nature lovers that would be a really good fit should anybody want to. And that moose that you see on the picture right now, he was one of our rescues. His name is Chocolate. And Rayanne, who I don't think she's still on the call right now, she's our vice president. She's the one that was helping with technology. She had him for I think a couple of weeks. She took care of him. He was an orphan. All grown up now.
Well, there's a question for me then. How would he have been released into the presumably into the wild, and actually was Rianne on a farm, or how was she able to
Yeah,
rehab a moose?
Yeah, she's rural.
Okay.
So yeah, she took him until he could get to a rehabilitator, and I think he went in a horse carrier.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, she was in love with that moose.
Oh, you would be, because you, especially if you've helped raise somebody, you just kind of fall in love with them. Yeah, that's great.
It's
Well,
tough. It's tough because you get very attached to them. I had magpies last year that I raised for a few weeks from Salthaven. I sometimes I have pens that I can put them in if we're full at her place until they can be released. Well, they wouldn't leave, and I would walk my dog and they'd be riding on my head. I'm like, no, you can go now, and they wouldn't go. And so I had to take them to Free to Be Me in Moose Jaw because they just wanted to be around people. And so now they joined a little magpie gang in Moose Jaw, so they fly with a gang now. So I'm really happy about that.
oh, that's a great story. And I love your vulture walking into the bar, by the way. That's all you need to that's all you need to say.
I
That's
know.
great.
A vulture walked into a bar. No, he really did.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for doing this. I'm really happy that I ran into you that day in McKell, and it certainly has helped. I love knowing about these things too, because you do feel like with the bunnies and what have you, and you hear that so often because we have so many jackrabbits in the city that that people are seeing them everywhere. So like just
Yeah.
knowing when not to interfere is really good to know. So
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
Yep. And like I said, so many of us have no idea until you actually get involved like I did. I had no idea that, you know, bunnies were without their mother for that long, right? They come back once in the morning or night, and other than that, that's it. They're on their own. So yeah,
Mhm.
there's a lot to learn.
Yeah. So on behalf of Nature Regina, we'd like to thank you by giving you a 1-year membership to our society. So we'll follow up with that afterwards, but just it's just a way of of thanking you. And I just have a couple of announcements, and if there's no other questions that anybody has, I think we're good, right, with the, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thanks so much. So
Okay,
really, you're welcome to stay. It's just a quick announcement, and then we're going to go.
okay. Have a
So
great day.
thank you. So I just wanted to let people know you got a message today that we canceled the Get Outside Kids Club and the Get Outside Outdoor Explorer events. And we've done that until the beginning of April, so a couple of weeks, and then we'll see what happened. This is particularly in Regina because of the increase of the variants, and that we seem to be a bit of a hot spot. And we're getting a number of messages, you know, kind of mixed messages on away from Saskatchewan Health Authority and our Premier and Dr. Shahab. So we just thought we wanted to err on the side of caution, but we will post online content so that people can go on the self-guided version of these events. You may know there's 22 self-guided hikes that are already on the website. And so if people are certainly free or they're free for people to go and do their own self-guided hikes with their own families or small groups. So, and then if you follow Nature Regina on Facebook or Instagram, you'll be notified when the content becomes available again, and I'm sure on the website. So the next Wandering Wednesday is going to be released on March the 24th. And as I said, you can download the adventure guides from the website, and you get the location, the direction, and little known facts that, you know, might help provide an inspiration for an outdoor adventure. And next month we've got Dr. Branimir Jetsvaj. I'm going to have to learn how to say this properly before then. And his presentation is going to be Action for Climate and Biodiversity, Why Small Steps Are Important. So many of you may know Branimir already. He's a photographer, and Trevor Harriott and Branimir produced a book together not too long ago called Islands of Grass, which is just an absolutely beautiful book. So I'm really excited that we'll have Branimir here next week. And other than that, if there aren't any questions or comments from anyone, thank you again for coming out, and thank you for your patience as always with the technology. Thanks a lot, Kirsten, for helping.